6 narratives. I'm excited to share these stories with you because each one of them will surely creep you out. If you would like to support Unlucky 6 Narratives, hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. Story 1. I find most of the unique places I visit through a rabbit hole of Google searches or watching too much YouTube. I happened to be searching for haunted hotels near me late one night. The historic Brookstone Inn, built in 1837, caught my attention. It's located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. First built as a cotton mill and then turned into the hotel it is today. The first ghost mentioned to roam the main floor at the hotel is a cat that was a pet of the hotel staff until it died. Some people claim to hear or see a shadow that resembles a cat roaming around on the main floor. Searching further into the history revealed a murder that happened when the building was first a cotton mill. The top floor of the mill was used as a dormitory for women employed there. This is now the 4th floor of the hotel, and the floor that is considered to be the most haunted. A lady named Sally was thrown down an elevator shaft by another tenant, and from most accounts I read, Sally and her murderer were supposedly friends. Some accounts have said that they have seen shadow figures, especially on the 4th floor and in Sally's old room. As it turned out, I didn't have anything planned for the following weekend. I got my boyfriend to agree to go. We asked for Sally's room, the most haunted. I was super excited and brushed up on the paranormal research that week with YouTube videos and Reddit. That Saturday morning, my boyfriend and I drove the 3-hour drive down the interstate. We checked in the early afternoon. The common area was impressive with portraits of seemingly important people connected to the cotton mill/hotel. They all wore such serious faces. China tea sets were on display in a fancy wooden cabinet. A fireplace was located in the center with an antique furniture set laid out comfortably. They even had a TV and a coffee machine. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. As I stepped out of the elevator, I suddenly felt very secluded from the rest of the hotel. It was eerily quiet and the air was still. I could almost hear the humming noise that comes from too much quietness. The hallway was also dimly lit with a sitting area with antique couches on either side. The key card ended up not working. I volunteered to stay with the luggage while my boyfriend dealt with the card situation. As soon as I heard him get in the elevator, I regretted my decision to stay behind as the quietness hit me. I tried to get comfy and sat down outside of the room. I started to play on my phone to ease my mind. A few moments go by and I get the feeling of being stared at. I peeked down the dark end of the sitting room. I all of a sudden felt a rush of adrenaline come over me, as if I was being chased or someone charging me. I jolted up and considered sprinting into the elevator to get the hell out of there. I decided to be rational and resumed waiting. I was thinking about what was taking my boyfriend so long when I heard shuffling at the end of the hallway. I was instantly terrified. I braced myself on the couch. I realized the noise was coming from a hidden corner on the opposite side of the sitting area. I jumped when I saw a white towel tossed onto the floor. It came from around the corner, hidden from my line of sight. A second towel tossed, and I saw a glimpse of an arm from around the corner. I sighed with relief that it was just an employee collecting dirty towels jewels or something. Although I had no idea where they had come from, I almost laughed out loud at how bad I had wigged out like that. My boyfriend reappeared with a new key card a second later. When I stepped into the room, I took in the layout. The room was pretty spacious, but a little cluttered with plain furniture and 2 queen beds that were outdated. And there was a severe lack of natural light. There were too many shadowed corners, and even turning on lamps and light fixtures in the room didn't even liven it up. There was a bay window sitting area down a short hallway apart from the shape of the room, overlooking the courtyard. I thought of how many people had looked out this same window and felt something ominous come over me. My boyfriend and I like to explore the streets of wherever we travel to. We were hoping to find a bar. I needed a drink after all the weird energy. We got back to the hotel a little after dark. We hung out in the courtyard for a bit and admired the leafless trees glowing with fairy lights. I had to pee, which unfortunately made us have to go back to our room. I would have stayed in that courtyard all night. Shortly after we got settled back into the room, I remembered the spirit box I had packed. I had seen people on TV use one, but this was my first time trying. I got so excited about finally getting to use this that I didn't hesitate in turning it on. I sat down in the center of the room on the couch and made myself comfortable. The spirit box makes a loud, obnoxious white noise between scanning channels. I didn't have a lot of experience with deciphering the words of 10 seconds in which a spirit may communicate with you. I asked if a woman named Sally was in the room with us. The channel scanned through 3 seconds of all sorts of songs and people talking when I deciphered a yes. The second question I asked was, did you get murdered by getting thrown down the 4th floor elevator shaft? I thought I heard a yes, but it wasn't as obvious as the first response. Trying to communicate to spirits with a spirit box is tiring and annoying. So after a few more questions and getting nothing but random music and talking, I ended the conversation saying that maybe Sally and I could be friends if she could show herself in some physical form. All I can say about this is be careful what you ask for. I turned off the spirit box and said to my boyfriend we should sit in silence for a few minutes. It was about 11 p.m. at this point. We sat on the bed and stared at each other as we kept completely still. The dead silence was actually nice after all the noise chaos coming from the spirit box. It was dead silent until a disembodied voice of a woman moaning from outside our room came from the hallway. "Oh my God," I said, looking at my boyfriend wide-eyed. I felt like my boyfriend was genuinely creeped out as well. He would never admit it though. He explained it away with old pipes or something. It may have been, but it was just one hell of a coincidence at the timing. I had also noticed that he had gotten increasingly irritated since we got back to the room. It was a total switch from when we were having drinks and dinner earlier. We decided to take a break from air quote ghost hunting and chill in the common area near the lobby. When I stepped out of the elevator, I felt something furry rub against the bottom of my leg. I thought I had accidentally stepped into something, but nothing was there. Then I thought of the ghost of the cat possibly being the culprit. It was a fast wisp across my leg, so I can neither confirm or deny what exactly it was. When we got to the common area, we were the only ones down there. There were so many antiques on display. I gazed at a painted portrait of a man and woman. Their expressions seemed emotionless, almost hardened. I felt their eyes locked on me while I moved along. My boyfriend and I lounged on the couch for a bit, watching something on the TV. I noticed that his mood improved again since being away from the fourth floor. It was around 1 in the morning when we decided that we should head to bed. We got ready for bed, and my boyfriend once again got super annoyed with me in the middle of a conversation and said he just wanted to go to sleep. I started to think that this was really odd of him to switch from his usual self to being a jerk. He fell asleep almost instantly. I turned on the small TV on top of a dresser for background noise. I wasn't asleep long when I was woken up by a set of loud and heavy footsteps coming from the hallway. I listened closer and could tell it started at the opposite end of the hallway/sitting area and stopped in front of the door to our room. I could feel the vibrations against the walls and floor from the heaviness of the footsteps. It seemed that someone was pacing incessantly. The noise from the television seemed to fade in comparison. The pacing went on for a while. I listened to the footsteps meticulously, starting from the far end and stopping outside the door, over and over. I pulled the covers up over my head and lay hard against my boyfriend's back, even though the sheets and comforter were incredibly heavy and hot. I tucked myself in tight. I'm not sure how long I had drifted off for when I felt 2 strong taps on my right shoulder. I had been facing my boyfriend under the sheets, so my right side was exposed. I thought I might have had a muscle twitch or something, but seriously, it felt like the kind of tapping when someone wants your attention. I was tempted to go to our car and sleep. I checked the clock on the side table and it was 4 a.m. I was pissed that I'd barely gotten any sleep. I decided that there was only a couple more hours until daylight and then we could leave. I was going to make my boyfriend drive back since he slept so soundly. I laid back down and put my boyfriend's limp arm over my shoulder. I guess as some feeling of being protected from being touched again. I felt a little peace that maybe I would be left alone. As I was dozing off, I felt a presence of something standing beside the bed next to me. I felt like whoever or whatever it was staring me down. I kept the covers above my head and tried to ignore the feeling. I lay like this with my heart beating out of my chest. I began to sweat nervously. "Damn it," I said aloud. I was irritated and exhausted. I laid there sweating and sticking to my boyfriend as I tried to close my eyes. A short time went by and I felt 2 firm taps on my foot this time. I straightened up in bed and at this point I was fed up with trying to sleep. I stayed up the remainder of the night and stared at the room and TV. I was trying to debunk everything that I felt physically and mentally, but I was perplexed. I also had never been touched by a ghost, nor did I believe that it could actually happen. We left the hotel at the first of dawn and headed out on the drive home. I felt off the whole day. For a few weeks following our stay in the 4th floor room at the Brookstone Inn, I felt an uneasy feeling at night. I had always felt comfortable in my home since I bought the place last year, but after that encounter, I felt unsafe. It was almost as if I was fighting a spiritual battle of negativity. I even started sleeping with my bathroom light on and the door cracked, and I had to have some sort of background noise during my sleep. I'm not sure if I had some sort of PTSD from my ghostly encounter that caused this feeling. Even my cat started acting strangely. My 2 cats are mostly calm and docile, but I noticed when I came home from work in the middle of the night that they seemed disturbed. Normally, they are asleep and wake up as I walk in. I kept asking them what was wrong and watched their behavior. Sometimes they would look over my head at something, or they looked towards the ceiling. their pupils dilated and hair standing on end as they moved around the room. One night, when I was laying next to my boyfriend in our bed, I was intently doing some work on my laptop. I had also decided to leave the overhead light off. It was silent and I wasn't even thinking of anything but my work at the time, when out of the dark I swear I heard my name. I thought I was going crazy, so I decided to cleanse every inch of my house with sage. I verbally banished all negative energy. I even cleansed myself, my cats, and my boyfriend reluctantly agreed. This seemed to work for a few days. I thought I had won the spiritual battle. But one night, after getting off of work and driving home, I began to feel a distraction in my back seat. A familiar, unsettling feeling crept its way up my back. This happened a few times, and I became distracted at some points while I drove the winding road to my house. I actually almost ran off the road once, but put my attention back ahead just in time. I hate to even recount these events caused by some unknown force. In my own opinion, having experienced all this, I had made a serious mistake that night trying to communicate with Sally. I have a theory that maybe what was taunting me in that room, at my house, and my car was not the possible friendly ghost of Sally. It may have been her murderer. Or maybe Sally was seeking revenge. I had asked for us to be friends. I will never know for sure why this happened. I just know that I won't ever directly evoke spirits in the afterlife again. Story 2. This whole story may seem quite odd and is still a mystery to me today. I am 32 years old now, but at the time of the story I was about 5 or 6 years old. On a summer day, my mom and dad invited the family over. When my cousins arrived, we separated ourselves from the adults and played outside in my backyard. We decided to play hide and seek in this wooded area behind my house. My cousin was the seeker and the rest of us had 30 seconds to hide. All of us quickly ran off in every direction, disappearing behind the trees. I remember running towards a broken fence line and hiding behind a tree that had ribbons tied around it. I started tugging on them and tried to count how many ribbons there were. I couldn't even count all of them before I lost interest. Now to remind you before this next part, I was just a kid. As I'm waiting to be found, I had the sudden urge to pee. I didn't want to wait, so I peed behind one of the trees with the ribbons hanging from it. After I was done peeing, I felt a strong feeling of uneasiness, so I left the spot and came out of the woods into the yard. Everyone was freaking out, thinking I got lost. Later that night, I asked my mom what the ribbons were doing in the woods. She said the ribbons were a part of a ceremony, an offering to honor the other side. I felt a sense of guilt that only a 5 or 6-year-old boy could manage. I didn't tell anyone in my family what I had done though. I hadn't intentionally done it, so I saw no reason to hold myself accountable. I tossed and turned trying to fall asleep that night. In the middle of the night, I climbed down from the top bunk to go pee. When I came back into my brother and I's room, I climbed back up quietly because I didn't want to wake him up. As I was about to fall back asleep, I felt myself being tickled. It was very subtle at first. I started to giggle to myself. Then I felt an increase in the strength of the tickling. It was almost like it was being done with violence. I felt fingers digging deep into the side of my ribs and moving across the grooves of my rib cage. I uncontrollably began to gasp and laugh louder. I started struggling for breath and felt blood rush to my head. It subsided as quickly as it started, and I immediately took in an exaggerated inhale. I was so confused about what had just happened that I thought I had dreamt it. I climbed down from my bunk again and went to the bathroom mirror. I lifted my shirt, and all up and down my sides were red marks. They weren't scratch marks, but the marks felt like rug burn. I don't know if what happened that night was connected to my actions earlier that day, but I feel sorry that I disrespected that tribute honoring the dead. Even though I was only 5 or 6 at the time, this event has taught me to always respect others and think twice of where I go pee. Story 3. I was recently told about this story by my mother, and I thought I would share it. We were looking through some family photos and came across an old worn picture of my grandmother and grandfather. I don't remember my grandfather. I was actually a baby when this story took place. I asked my mom about what he was like, and she only gave me some brief details. It was almost like she was avoiding my question. She then shared this story that I am about to recount to you. I was about a year old, and my mom was raising me by herself as well as taking online college classes. We were living in a trailer park at the time. My mom was doing schoolwork on her computer late that night. It was completely quiet, and she hadn't heard any of the neighbors for a while. She was studying intently, and out of nowhere came 3 sharp knocks on the door in the living room. The knocks were so forceful and loud, she jumped out of her chair. She got up to swing open the door with a shotgun in hand, but no one was there. Mom went back to studying. She thought it may have been the troublemakers next door playing some sort of dumb prank. About 30 minutes later, my mom was in the kitchen making some tea before bed. She had just taken a sip from her mug when 3 loud knocks came from the opposite door leading to our small backyard. This time, the 3 knocks were so forceful, they shook the side of the trailer. She didn't even go to the door. She just slept with her shotgun in hand the entire night. My mom said that she debated calling the cops, but decided to just go to bed because she was so tired from work and classes that day. And my mom has always been the type of person to handle things herself. That morning, my mom got a call from my aunt telling her that my grandpa had died last night. My mom realized later on that the knocking started when my grandpa was either dead or on his way. From what I do know of my grandpa was that he was not a very nice man. He was harsh and cold towards his family, and my mom believes that those knocks she heard came from my grandpa as some sort of message, and if it was in fact the kids next doors messing with her, the timing was one hell of a coincidence. Story 4. Back in January of 2020, I was driving back from my buddy's house in Newark to Philly, where I live. I got started on the trip about 11 p.m. that night. It was about an hour and a half drive, and I had to be at work in the morning. I had been driving for about 45 minutes. The road became a straight stretch, and with no other cars on the road. My eyes were heavy and I was getting tired. I knew that I should have taken that nap. I turned my metal music up, thinking that would jolt myself awake. It helped a little, but my eyes became itchy. I took off my glasses and gave my eyes a quick rub. My vision had just come back into focus when I saw something unidentifiable dart across the road in front of me. My high beams outlined some of the features, but it moved too fast for me to take a good look. I know that it wasn't a deer or a dog. The shape just didn't match up with either. It looked like a fairly tall, long, hairless being moving on their hands and knees. To best describe it, it looked humanoid or possibly demonic. All I know for sure is that the sight of the thing scared the shit out of me. I kept driving and tried to keep my head on straight. I focused on getting as far up the road and away from that thing as possible. My knuckles turned white from my grip on the steering wheel. When I was about 20 minutes from my house, it was about 1 in the morning. I took my usual route through the suburbs. I saw a group of what appeared to be a gang that was up to no good. I tried to drive around them when I saw one of the men brandishing a firearm at his side. My heart jolted, and suddenly I knew what to do. I cut my lights and darted as fast as I could down an alley that I spotted between houses. Thankfully, pulling a fast one got me to safety 2 streets away. It was a rare occurrence for a thing like that to happen on my side of town. It was also weird that I saw that thing just 45 minutes earlier. I have tried to come up with theories about the coincidences. Maybe that thing I saw in the road was some kind of warning, or maybe it was a bad omen to cross paths with it. Story 5. This story takes place when I was 9 and living in a complex with my father in Tucson, Arizona. Due to my dad's health, we didn't go many places, and I was stuck inside frequently. I got restless at times and would go out and befriend some of the neighborhood kids. A lot of them were quite strange. I used them as an excuse to get out of the house. I had befriended a girl named Mary. She lived on the other side of the complex with her father and his girlfriend. Mary didn't get along with Dora, the girlfriend, or her dad. Her father was strict, and whenever I wanted to hang out and talk to Mary, I had to talk to her from an open window. Since I am a male, I couldn't come inside, he said. Looking back, it was pretty weird. I guess it was just a quirky aspect of our friendship. One afternoon, I walked over to Mary's place and knocked on the door as usual. Instead of guiding me to the nearest window, she actually invited me inside. I thought she was kidding, but she insisted she wasn't. Before I walked in, Mary warned me that Dora had an obsession with dolls and had them all meticulously placed throughout the house. She said that I could absolutely not touch or move them in any way, or Dora would notice and raise hell at her. She had another friend over. I really did think they were kidding around. I stepped inside and holy mother of dolls, Mary wasn't screwing with me. There were dolls placed everywhere. I swear there were at least 100 dolls of all shapes and sizes. Some encased cabinets, some were placed on display on side tables, on every counter. Dolls even decorated the top of the entertainment system for their TV. I made a comment about it being totally insane to live like this. Mary got upset and I had to apologize. We sat down and watched a movie. I had way too many sodas during it and had to use the bathroom. Mary told me that there were dolls in the bathroom and reminded me to not touch them. I just said sure thing and walked down the hallway to the bathroom. Of course, there were dolls on top of the vanity and tiny ones in the medicine cabinet. As I faced the toilet, I came face to face with the china doll faded with age. I didn't even pee. I just came out a minute later and sat down for a little while longer. When Mary's friend said that she had to head home, I went along with. I'm not sure if this was some sort of obsession or OCD thing, but I felt like I literally walked into a scene of a doll-themed horror movie. That was the most bizarre thing I've seen up to this day. Story 6. This event is straight up some kind of zombie shit. Let me tell you that this would have horrified anyone. I have been living at this apartment complex for about 2 years. I was pretty familiar with all my neighbors that lived in the same building as me. I pretty much greet everyone I pass. So anyways, I was walking to the group of mailboxes for my building and noticed the lawyer guy that lives above me out of the corner of my eye. I knew this man by the name Mr. Moody, and he was always wearing a suit. He seemed really put together and greeted me almost daily. Only this time, as I turned toward him to wave, I noticed something was off. His clothes were tattered and dirty. His hair was disheveled. I stopped mid-wave when I noticed that he had turned towards me and was just staring at me blankly. He began walking my way. He seemed off balance and was staggering towards me. Mr. Moody, are you all right? Should I call somebody? I called out. I made sure to back away to keep a safe distance. He looked at me with blank eyes and a grin creeped across his face. His face looked literally lifeless. At that moment, I thought screw this and started running towards my apartment. He began to walk faster in my direction. I tripped over my own feet as I came closer to the stairwell. I looked behind me for just a moment as I picked myself up. He had picked up the pace a little, but was still off balance and slow compared to me. I leaped up the 3 flights of stairs and jingled for my apartment key. I bursted inside and locked the door and locked the deadbolt in place behind it. I was bracing myself against the door, and I think that I was hyperventilating. My boyfriend came running up to me. He kept asking what was wrong as I sat on the couch where he placed me. I didn't have the words at the moment to explain what exactly I had just seen. Hell, I didn't even know. I was finally able to relay that Mr. Moody was acting crazy outside in the parking lot. We thought about calling the police, but decided against it. I mean, maybe he was sick or something. Let's just stay inside tonight and we will check on him in the morning. We both agreed on the plan. I mean, I was still in shock and weirded out. I was not about to drag out the situation further. The next morning, there was a knock on the front door. I immediately checked the people, and it was the nice middle-aged lady that lived beside me. I opened the door and greeted her a little confused. She never directly knocked on my door. She just occasionally left gift baskets on holidays on the doorstep. She had a troubled look on her face, and I began to feel concerned. She started with, "Good morning, hun. I came over here to see if you knew about what happened with Mr. Moody yesterday. You know, the man who lives upstairs, always wears a suit." I was taken aback at the question. I saw him briefly yesterday and he was acting weird. Then she told me what she knew. She had gotten up at dawn to take her usual walk around the neighborhoods. She saw 3 cop cars with red and blue lights flashing. There was a man standing on the street watching the commotion. She went up to him and asked what was going on. He said all he heard was that just before dawn, one of his neighbors spotted Mr. Moody stumble out of a house covered in blood. The neighbor called the police, and that was it. When she finished talking, I slowly slunk down the wall outside of my apartment and sat there. I couldn't believe it. Mr. Moody had snapped, and I began to blame myself for not calling the cops after our encounter in the parking lot. A few days later, the event came out in the newspapers. The title was, "A well-respected lawyer kills 2 women inside their home." It went on to say that he gained entry through one of the main floor windows by throwing himself into it over and over until the glass gave way. When the detectives asked him why he did it, he was lucid. He said the aliens had controlled his body and made him do it. I'm serious when I say this, guys. Experiencing a horrifying event like this has stuck with me. Sometimes I swear that I see Mr. Moody's blank and lifeless body out of the corner of my eye when I walk across the parking lot.